Up to this point in this playlist, we have used the UI, notebooks and pipelines to build and deploy Microsoft Fabric items between different workspaces. And this video is about what happens after the deployment. Using Fabric REST API, you can verify that resources exist, inspect their configuration and trigger pipelines or notebooks for their post-deployment setup. And here is the important nuance I wanted to highlight right away. If you want to verify that resources exist, that means that you pretty much don't really trust your framework and your CI/CD pipelines in the first place, and then you have a much bigger problem because you are trying to test and verify the framework itself. But still, this approach gives you the visibility and automation and control, especially in that last bit that I mentioned about the post-deployment setup. So you do the deployment to your QA workspace or your production workspace and run some sort of a pipeline or the notebook to configure this workspace correctly. So not only to have the correct items, but have a correct configuration of them in there. And before jumping into the demo, as we usually do, there is one choice that you need to make. And recently Microsoft introduced the Fabric CLI as a wrapper over the Fabric REST API itself. And now you can either call REST API directly from your code, for example from Python or from Bash using curl, or you can use the Fabric CLI, which is essentially a wrapper on top of those APIs, as I said. REST API give you full transparency and maybe a little bit more control, but you need to write all of the logic yourself. And Fabric CLI, what is great about it is that it feels more official and enterprise ready. So it's quite good for the CI/CD. In this video I will show you both, and you can pick and choose and decide what you want to use. And the first thing that I wanted to show is that I have a Fabric CLI, as I said. It is available as a Python package that can be installed as usual, and there is quite a good documentation in terms of what commands are available, how to use it, and etc. etc. In addition, as I said, there is a Fabric REST API itself, and the documentation is quite good as well. And actually you can just get a link to the Fabric CLI somewhere here. This one, the Fabric command line interface. That's a link to the documentation, but I will leave all of the links over here in the item management. That's how you can manage those APIs and manage jobs, manage pipelines, and so on. So quite a lot of support with get, update, delete operations. What I have in my Fabric workspace is I created only 2 of the items. So in my dev workspace, and there is only single dev workspace at the moment, I have a Lakehouse Silver and a notebook that is called Silver Views. The idea is that we want to deploy to other environment using CI/CD, and after that configure it. So to create views, for example. And here I am creating a materialized lake views from Spark SQL, or it could be from T-SQL, the actual view, up to you, what you want to use. And that view uses the person's table that I have, and there are some data in that person's table, and I want to see what are the people in my view, what are the people which have address, so some sort of valid customers, for not just persons. What we can do now is to get to the code base. And in the example over here I have 2 scripts. Oh, actually the pipeline and the script for Python. And what I'm doing in here is the first thing that I'm trying to do is to use a Python script, so to use a REST API to install Azure Identity and Requests to be able to make those calls and authenticate against Azure in my script, and in my script over here, what I'm doing is I am hardcoding the workspace ID which I have. After that, we authenticate using the default Azure credentials, and those credentials, which is quite nice, they come from this task. So the Azure CLI will authenticate this user with a managed identity that is used to connect to Azure, and I can use it in my script. And after that, we can run various commands against the workspace. So for example, here we just list all of the available items, so all of them from the workspace, and we can search the specific item by name. So in my case, I'm looking for the Silverview's notebook, and just iterate through all of them and verify that if we have those items, yes or no, and what is the type of the item based on those that we found. The thing is that here, as I said in the beginning, we verify if items exist, but it's not really needed, I guess, for the CI/CD process, unless you have to create something manually and you must validate that this item actually exists after the deployment is complete, and if it's not, then something needs to be done in a manual way. And the last bit of this script is that we are actually triggering the job to run, and the interesting bit is that you have to know what are the job types over here. So it could be pipeline, and for the notebooks it is run notebook, and this will trigger the notebook to be executed. And after that, we can validate if the execution was good, so if it was accepted or if it is completed. In parallel, or right after that, actually what I am doing is I am running the Fabric CLI. To run Fabric CLI, it is done slightly differently. So here we have to install the Fabric CLI as in documentation. Then I had to update my code base to set the encryption fallback enabled true. So basically it saves the credentials as plain text, which is not really good for security, but as it is executed on ephemeral agents, it is fine. And in addition, I couldn't really make it work with the managed identity of this Azure CLI. I was trying really hard but couldn't, and instead I had to recreate the service principal in a manual way and have its secret available. So here I'm authenticating using the username, which is a client ID, and the service principal secret that I saved as a secret variable for my pipeline. And on top of that, I'm specifying what tenant is going to be used. After that, we can double check what is the authentication status, and after all of that, we can finally run the job. And the highlight here is that we are doing the job run, not start, because in that case we can even wait for the finish of this job and make sure that our configuration was successful, and therefore the deployment is completely done and not still waiting, pending, and potentially failing. The interesting bit about the Fabric CLI is that you need to specify the path with item types. So in my case over here it is dev.workspace, while as dev is just the name of it and workspace is a type, and then the silverviews.notebook with notebook in after the dot being the type of item that we want to trigger. And here we can see how it was actually executed. So we have my run Python script, and it took only 16 seconds, and the response of it was that we running the Python script, we found my notebook, and here it out just showing what is the ID of the notebook for validation purposes, and after that the response status was 202, but the actual execution took some time. Right after that, I tried to run the Fabric CLI, and the execution of this step is 1 minute and 10 seconds, so 7 times more, 6 times more, something along those lines. And the interesting bit, as I said, is that it was running and it was waiting for the job completion without timeouts, but it is possible to configure it in various ways. And after that, we can check what we have in the notebook itself. And if we will go to the recent runs, we will see that there were 2 runs that were successful, and they triggered pretty much at the same time and took roughly the same amount of time, 40 seconds or 44, 46 seconds. And that is definitely greater than 16 seconds that took for the Python version of the notebook of the REST API call. And yeah, of course, it is possible to validate that the call was good in just continuously pulling through the code. That's what I said, that REST API gives you that flexibility, but it's not out of the box. Whereas with Fabric CLI, you can just let the system do what it's supposed to do. And the good thing is that both of those executions were good, and we have my view available. So, to summarize, REST API gives you that transparency and understanding what's happening, and that Fabric CLI gives you automation that fits cleanly into the CI/CD. They are not really competing tools, they are different layers, and you can use the Fabric CLI to write your CI/CD pipelines in a more clean way that is really easy to explain, for example, to your security. And Fabric REST API can be used, if you need to validate something on top of that and do it in local and debugging mode rather than production ready. With that, it pretty much wraps my Fabric for DevOps engineering playlists, and after that I plan to work on security, so stay tuned for that. See you!